What's up, y'all, and welcome back to Found Bytes, a game review series. My name is Brian, and I'll be your host. If you don't know about us, we're all about finding and testing out small, high-quality video games. This is a podcast that aims to respect your time and money as a gamer and a consumer by sifting through storefronts and sales to find those gems that may be worth your precious resources. But enough about the show. Let's get into our next game. By Sweet Carole is the game for this week's episode. By Sweet Carole is a 2D horror adventure game developed by Little Sewing Machine and released in October of 2025. The game is available on PS5 and 4, Switch, PC, Xbox One, Series X and S. And the first thing that you're noticing, and this is exactly what was drawing me to the game, is the art style. So a beautiful hand-drawn art style, and it is very much trying to emulate 90s Disney movies like Beauty and the Beast, Bambi, Alice in Wonderland, things like that. And it has a twist of horror with like stealth and puzzle solving, maybe some action sometimes. The game definitely plays like a horror puzzle game, almost like a Resident Evil, like 2D horror, like you're finding things, you're trying to combine things. It's very lock and key. It is limited in terms of gameplay, certainly based on my expectations or maybe what I wanted it to be. But definitely good variation at times with what you're doing. Mini games that you're playing, some timed puzzles. Definitely reminds me a bit of Space for the Unbound, where you're really just moving in a 2D space, but you're doing interactions, you're exploring a little bit, and maybe you've got mini games going on. But definitely takes a lot from games like Little Nightmares, Franbow, these sort of like 2D horror stealth kind of games. The game released with an MSRP of $24.99, and the game runs somewhere between 6 to 10 hours. I'm seeing that completionists might go up to 12. I don't really know what it would mean to complete this game. I'm not really finding a lot of extra things. It seems a bit linear, but anyway, any range from 6 to 10 hours to get through it. I got it on PSN. I got it on sale for $17.49. And it is cross-buy PS4, PS5, so I'm playing it on my PS5. I think I'll download it on my PS4, maybe have my wife give it a try. I have put in probably between 5 and 6 hours. There are 10 chapters in the game. I'm in the 7th chapter, so I'm moving along. I could probably beat it in another session or two. The game does have a physical release, and it's just kind of a standard box. It has a lot of digital stuff, maybe like a reversible cover, and that is just the PS5 and Switch versions. And this was released in all retail, so any major retailer, Target, Amazon, things like that. And I think $40 is the price tag on that. The game does have a vinyl release through Lost in Cult, and I think Lost in Cult is out of the UK. I bought a couple things from them, but the vinyl release is a 2 LP, and I think the US equivalent is around 50, maybe 53 or something like that. I took a look at this. This is beautiful. It's beautiful gold. It's interesting, like the cover of the vinyl and like the whole aesthetic is very not much like the game because the game is very dark, so it's a nice contrast. And like we said, the game was developed by Little Sewing Machine, and this is apparently a small team, I want to say out of Italy. At least I saw Italy somewhere on their website. And this is headed by Chris Darrell. The game actually, when you boot it up, it says Chris Darrell's By Sweet Carole. So I don't really know this guy, but he did the Remothered series, which I've heard of, but I'm not too familiar with. And in terms of just buzz and seeing this, I feel like I saw it somewhere, maybe on Twitter or something like that. I was pretty locked in just from the aesthetic, which I think most people will be gravitating towards this because of that. I feel like I played a demo. I don't know. There was a sequence that I was playing in halfway through the game or so where I was like, I feel like I've played this before. All the aesthetics matching up and like what I was trying to do. But maybe I was just having a weird deja vu. But regardless, I definitely jumped on it because of the aesthetic, and I decided to give it a shot. All right, let's talk about gameplay, and we'll start with just basics. So you're going to be in a 2D environment, so you're moving left or right. You are going to have a jump, and this will vary depending on things we'll talk about in a little bit, but you'll be able to jump. There is a run button where you hold it and you run. Thankfully, games like this, especially that are horror-centric, I think back to games like Lamentum, where it's like, if this game didn't have a run button, I would be pulling my hair out. So it has a run button. You're not moving that fast, but certainly faster than if you're walking, although there is a specific mechanic that is going to be important for this and for the horror kind of stealth aspects. There are like character-specific extra moves, like the main character, Alana, she has like a kick move where like if you move up next to something, she'll be able to kick it, and that might actually open something up or it might cause something to happen. But different characters, which we'll talk about, might have other specific things or movesets that are unique to them. A lot of the game is going to be interacting with things, and so different prompts are going to pop up. This is going to happen a lot, and this might be different buttons that you press when you come up to the thing that you're interacting with, or it might be a direction that you have to go. Sometimes you'll come up to a place where there'll be multiple ways to interact, and they'll kind of stack up vertically. And it could be something like press triangle to look at this and get information, press square and there's like gears. You'll be like manipulating the thing, or it could be going into your inventory and using an item. So there'll be prompts for all those things and sort of different icons. So you get used to what pressing certain buttons means. And also if there are multiple options for a thing, you'll know that like, okay, I'm going to have to do a lot of things with this. You're also going to be climbing ladders at times. You're going to be using stairs, and this is where a lot of the directional inputs are going to be important. It's not quite platforming because it's not like an action game. It's certainly not fast-paced, but there is some fidgeting jankiness with directional kind of inputs. For example, like if you have to walk up a staircase and you could walk past it and keep going to the left, like you're going to have to hold up while you walk past. So it's like you're kind of directing the joystick diagonally up to the left. Sometimes it doesn't quite register right away. It's not that big of a deal, but if you're in like a horror sequence or you're being chased, like it can be a little finicky. Like you have to go back and forth a couple times. And nothing really fast paced. Like I said, there are some things where you can run and jump, especially as specific characters, because you're able to jump kind of further, or maybe some like quick jump back and forth type stuff, but nothing too crazy like action platforming. And there are times where like you're going to come into contact with like a steep or like a tightrope walk, like a steep wall, or like, you know, there's a very limited space. But when you're walking across the screen, like your character will like put their back against the wall and like slowly step, and you'll just go. Sometimes a balance meter will come up. I think it's kind of random where like, you know, the character feels like they're going to fall over. And so like a balance meter will come up and it's like tipping side to side, and you have to like react to it and keep it in the middle. I feel like the game could have done without this. It's a little random, like I said. Honestly, I don't know. Like I've had it go all the way one side and I just dipped it. So like I think it's pretty lenient even so. So I don't really know the purpose of it. Let's talk progression in the game. So like we said at the top, the game is played in chapters. There are 10 of them. It's pretty much linear. I mean, you're going to be in kind of sandboxes at times, but for the most part, you're just kind of driving through. I don't know what kind of extras, like we said, completionists. I don't know if maybe like you'd have to beat the game a couple times to maybe get all trophies or something like that. But I'm not finding a lot of extras or even places to really explore and wander. But there are going to be each of these chapters having sort of mini sandboxes, and these are going to vary in terms of the size of the sandbox or even the length of like what you have to do in the sandbox. Some chapters are maybe going to be just like cutscenes, or you're not really doing too much crazy stuff or exploring. But a lot of these sandbox chapters are just going to be multiple rooms or even levels, like in a house or in a building. And you're going to be doing a lot of back and forth, collecting items, maybe finding a certain key to unlock another thing that will allow you to get this item to combine with this item. And a lot of it is going to be based around maybe solving puzzles or just nothing too crazy like riddles or anything. And what's really nice is there's actually a lot of info clues in the environment that'll help you or bring up relevant things to kind of make you be like, I think it probably has to do with this. And so you're going to see this when you have those interactions pop up, like those notifications, and you'll hit the triangle with the eye so you get more information, like looking at the thing. And that'll be how you're getting a lot of the information. Sometimes they're going to be like quick time events where you have button prompts, and these might be part of like things you have to do. It might be things that you just kind of fall backwards into, but these are going to be something that you're doing to progress forward or get past a certain sequence so you can get a certain item. And each of these sandboxes are probably going to have some kind of horror sequence. Again, think Little Nightmares. These are going to be sequences where like there's something that you're trying to avoid or might be chasing you. And so you're going to have places that you're going to hide. It could be like under tables. There are a lot of places in the background where a prompt will show up for you to hide. And what's interesting is I think sometimes if the thing chasing you passes you by, it might be able to detect you. But there's another mechanic once you're in those hidden spaces to hold your breath. And when you do that, like a meter pops up and it slowly starts to go inward. And I think if you go all the way inward and you hold your breath the whole time, like you'll die, quote unquote. So you want to kind of be aware of that. Like if something is coming to you and you found a hiding space, you might want to hold your breath. And then they'll kind of pass by a couple times and then the aggro will go down. And so speaking of the aggro, these horror sequences might get triggered a bunch of different ways. It might just be that you walk to a certain point and then it automatically triggers, or you get a certain item in like the puzzle sequence you're trying to do, and all of a sudden that like opens up something. And then other times, like when you're kind of wandering and exploring and checking out all the rooms and collecting different things, there are going to be things in the environment that like are a little more lively looking or a little better outlined than just the regular backdrop. And as you walk by these without running, you'll see them start to move or teeter, almost like you walking past them is like you're brushing on them. And so you know that they can be moved a little bit. If you happen to be running when you go past them, they will fall and they will break and they'll make a sound, and that will trigger potentially something to chase you. So that's something to just be aware of when you first kind of go through an area. I was walking, assuming that there wasn't anything that I was trying to avoid, because if you just run crazy, it'll start to break things and then something will come out that maybe you didn't want to come out. I will also say a good strategy is if you are being chased, obviously run and maybe try to run past all of the breakables because they are permanent. Like once it breaks, it's not going to, regenerate or anything like that. So you might want to get all of your things broken at the same time so you don't have to worry about it after you avoid the thing that's chasing you. And then eventually in the chapter or in the sandbox, once you acquire the key or go to the main objective or do the main thing, there'll probably be some kind of a cutscene and then it'll take you to the next chapter. All right, let's talk pacing of the game. So like we said, there's varied length in the different chapters, but as you go through later and later chapters, the challenge of the certain tasks that you'll have to do will progress. And it might just be that you're doing more, or there's more steps to solving a puzzle, or you have to travel further. But it is going to be pretty similar, back and forth, puzzle solving, maybe using the environment info like we talked about, like trying to get a little more clues from the environment, because it might not be as easy as just, oh, this key goes to here. But regardless, most of these chapters are going to be kind of open explore in the beginning, just to kind of spread out and see the limitations, what doors are locked, what things that you're going to have to find, take notes of things mentally. But slowly throughout the game, you will gain new abilities and new characters. And so these new characters will have slightly varied movesets. They will have varied speeds, varied size, which will be important because certain characters are only going to be able to go through certain sequences in the level, and also certain capabilities. So some of them will actually have limitations, like this one can't jump as high, or this one can't run, or this one can't do that. But you will get some sort of more advanced things, like one of the characters will be able to wall jump back and forth, like in sequence infinite times. One will actually have a melee attack, which I thought was going to be a little more present than it is. And then there will be a character that will also like use the environment to like maybe change its form or take on different elements of the environment and be able to kind of spread them to something that needs them. And you will be able to swap characters. So right now I'm at a point where your main character can swap to being another character, but also there is a case where like there will also be another character on the screen at the same time. So it's like a weird combination of like Greek, which is a game we talked about way back when, Greek Memories of Azure, which pulled on Lost Vikings from like the SNES Genesis days, where you have multiple characters on the screen that have different capabilities and you swap between them to kind of say like, oh, this one needs to hold this lever while this one travels through this crevice. And so you're like using the different strengths of the different characters to solve the puzzles, but also keeping in mind like their limitations, like, okay, this one can't do this one can do this, so I need to put this one there. All of them can do this thing, but I need to see like who can do what or who can't do what, so I can figure out how to solve this. You'll also find new mini games as you go through. Often these are kind of within like the linear cutscene aspect. So you might be like watching a bunch of dialogue and then you have to do some kind of mini game. These have a good variation, I feel, but there's really not that many of these. It's few and far between. I feel like this is where it's a little more interesting, and so I would have liked to seen a little more of this. The horror chase mechanic kind of stays the same, which is something that I wish would have evolved a little bit more, but it's pretty much like, oh, break something, it's going to come running, find a hiding spot, wait till it passes, so on and so forth. And there are some things that are a bit repetitive and slow, especially like animations. This caused a little bit of frustration for me. So sometimes you'll be like in a puzzle where someone has to step on a switch and the switch like opens something on the next screen or something like that. And every time you step on the switch, like it moves the camera to look at the thing. And I'm like, dude, I know that I've done this. Like, I know that when I hit this, it switches this. Sometimes I was able to, like, if I stepped on it while doing, like, a kick or a move or something like that, it skipped it. I just wish that it wasn't so deliberate and repetitive and so long. It's just, like, really breaking up what I'm trying to do. And I already feel like a lot of these puzzles are a bit go for this, go for that. So I would like for the time to kind of cut down. So that's something that annoyed me a little bit. And in terms of accessibility, finding the information is super helpful. Like if you're struggling to solve a puzzle, I don't think these puzzles are that difficult, but you can certainly look at the info of different interactions, and that will be super helpful just for giving you context. And some of them are like in the environment, like you might be walking through a library or something. Like some of these are just the only interaction is to just get information. Like you're looking at a bookshelf and it'll be like, oh, this is this book on this, and it has to do with these kinds of things. And it's like trying to give you a nudge, be like, this is relevant, read this. This is kind of what you're trying to do here. So that's all super helpful. There's no difficulty option, I believe. Like you do have a health bar and you can, I guess, die, or if you fall in a pit, or like those sequences where like you have to balance, I guess if you left it all on one side, like your character would just fall. But there's kind of like a reset animation. It just like brings you back up to maybe 10 seconds before. So I feel like dying, there's no real consequences. I think at the worst, you might have to redo a certain sequence, but for the most part, like, there's nothing really dire about dying. And I feel like that might take away a little bit from the horror aspect. I mean, the game definitely leans a bit on like having horror and like the chase sequences, but if there are no consequences, I don't know if there's really a lot of urgency. There are save points. There's like these old mailboxes that are really colorful and cool to see and interact with. And I think there's only one like per chapter or per sandbox, which is fine. I didn't find that I really needed, multiple save points, but anytime I passed by it, I would interact with it and save. I do think there is like an autosave thing, whether it's like at the beginning of a chapter, I'm not sure, but you can always reset the chapter. And this is something that I did a couple times with some of the mini games. So I feel like there's probably an autosave at the beginning of the chapter, but regardless, I wouldn't turn it off unless you hit a mailbox and save it. All right, let's talk about the vibe of By Sweet Carole. And this is really the heavy hitter for this game, and it starts with the visuals. This is what drew me in. I feel like it's what's going to draw in most people. This game is beautifully hand-drawn, but it is drawn in a certain aesthetic that is just unavoidable. Like, you can't not notice it. It is meant to emulate Disney, 100%. I'm talking like 80s, 90s, Beauty and the Beast, Bambi, Snow White, Alice in Wonderland, even a little bit of like Scooby-Doo, darker backgrounds, like interesting animations of the face, and sort of having this dusty kind of haze over everything, and everything's colored in like watercolors. Like, you definitely get that vibe right off the bat. It's why I played this game, and I feel like it's why most people will. And sort of a varied focus. Like, sometimes things are blurry, whether in the foreground or the background, but it varies. Sometimes something in the foreground is a bit blurry. Sometimes where you are, like the character, a little bit of overlap, maybe some blurred lines outlining some of the characters or some of the objects. I didn't find this to be something distracting. I actually found this to add to the charm of the visuals and sort of give it like a little bit of its own sort of unique twist. It's not like a perfect Disney outline animation. Like, there's some haziness to it, and I really dug that. A lot of detail when it comes to characters. When characters are standing still, whether it's you, whether it's the thing chasing you, really good animations. Like, they're alive. Like, you can see your character blinking. Their eyes are kind of sparkling. Your character has these rosy cheeks. And if you're just standing there, sometimes she'll like look around a little bit, like most characters would, not like a crazy like Crash Bandicoot like breaks into dance, but definitely something where it's not like, if you stop moving, like your character is just kind of frozen. Like, it is feeling very alive, these characters, just as you're watching. Environments, like I said, a bit darker. Backgrounds are definitely like on the lower end of the color spectrum. It's meant to be sort of in shadow, I guess, because shadow kind of plays a vague thematic role, but a lot of like, browns or grays, which is an interesting contrast because your characters definitely have that bright color pop. But a lot of the environments are going to be like old wood, like staircases, furniture, kind of turn of the century home. Like, you're in this weird boarding school. And it definitely feels like, you've got lanterns and like old switches for electricity. And then other times you'll be in like a forest and it's super spooky. Think of a lot of Disney settings. And I feel like thematically, the visuals are kind of trying to go along with that Disney aspect. A lot of indicators that are very helpful. So anytime there'll be something interactable in the environment, as you get closer, you'll see a yellow dot, or maybe it's green. I don't know. And then if you get close to it, like I said, the multiple icons for different ways to interact are kind of stacking vertically. and you'll get used to these. Like the eye is for information, like the gears are for interacting with it. If there's a key, that means you're using an item in your inventory to interact with it. So all of these things very good in terms of visual communication. Again, the movable, breakable things that are fidgeting as you walk by them. This is a visual tell you just have to pay attention to. It's subtle enough, but it doesn't break immersion or doesn't, make you feel like you're in a game. But I feel like it's really well done, personally. And just overall, visually, it's just stunning. I mean, you're playing kind of in a Disney movie, it feels. And I do think that aspect really lands here. The audio, really great, fully orchestrated score. Again, kind of going along with the visuals, like they're going for something Disney-esque, of Disney production value. And the music in the game is really good. I wouldn't necessarily say I could pick out a track, but definitely fully orchestrated. It feels like warmth, full surrounding of audio at certain sequences, certainly in dialogue sequences and like more meaningful scenarios. Like you do feel it. It does really contribute to the feel of what you're getting from the game and the characters. But other times, like when you're in a horror sequence, whoa, the shrieking, the stabbing strings, like dun, 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 like you really do feel it. And it adds to the vibe 100%. Really like the voice acting too. I feel like it's really well done, very professional, just well acted, overacted a bit at times, but rightfully so, with the different characters. And there's a narration that kind of comes in and out, maybe not so much breaking the fourth wall, but, talking about the character and, what is currently happening. And sometimes I didn't really feel like it was necessary, or I forgot that it was happening because I hadn't heard it in a while. But again, trying to kind of have that Disney level production or that aesthetic, trying to remind you of things. Something that's interesting with the voice acting, like I was not a fan of the volume levels that were there by default. I had to adjust and turn down the volume of the vocals because like the speakers that I had, like the narrator was just like blowing out. It was almost muffled, like it was so loud, and I really had to turn it down. But once I adjusted the levels, it was fine. Sound effects are really good, certainly helpful. Like, the things moving that are breakables, like once they break, like it really does immerse you in sort of the horror aspect of like, oh, you got to be really quiet. And then finally, when it comes to settings and themes, once again, this pulls from a lot of things. It pulls from Disney for sure. I feel like at the top has got to be Alice in Wonderland. Just, rabbits are a thing. The idea of spiraling, insanity. Visually, you see this a lot. I don't want to spoil too much, but definitely rabbits come up. Definitely feeling like you fell down a wormhole. Certainly time and clocks being a thing. And also Cinderella, specifically in the way like your character's treated. You're kind of treated like stepchild or like this lesser than or this doofus or like head in the clouds or whatever. And that reflects a lot in sort of the cadence of the story. Definitely feeling a lot of comparison to a game we talked about way back when, A Space for the Unbound. Certainly the idea of having a missing friend that is, the main purpose or the main thing that you're after from the beginning of the game, but also like multiple realities and like which is the dream and which is the real thing. I'm also feeling a lot from the show The Magicians. My wife loves that show. I've seen it a couple times just by proxy, but the idea of having multiple worlds and like multiple roles, like you're an ordinary person here, you're a king or a princess or a queen or whatever here. And the setting is a bit weird because it goes back and forth, like I said, between like, this crazy fantasy world or whatever, and then sort of a normal reality. Your character is at a boarding school for girls. I don't really know what the purpose of it is. It seems like they're at this school to be trained to be wives or whatever, or, fulfilling the place of women in society alongside successful men. I don't know. It's a bit antiquated, almost like pre-suffrage, maybe turn of the century. So I'm not really sure if that's some kind of a metaphor or something like that with what's going on in sort of the other world. But a lot of interesting links there. And again, sort of your character being kind of an outcast or kind of like slow to move. But definitely some Cinderella sequences where like, you're being noticed when other people think maybe you shouldn't be noticed. So interesting things there. But a lot of things that you go through, like I said, the idea that your friend is missing, it's a super mystery and you're seeing her in dreams, but are the dreams reality? The idea of her leaving you letters that you're trying to find, not that you actually get to read any of them. Magic is certainly present. It's not explicitly talked about, but the idea of just evil overtaking something, illusions, transformations, all kinds of different things like that, but evil invading this world versus the other world where they came from. There's some time stuff, so mechanics of puzzles will have some timey-wiminess. It has a lot of different things. I don't know if it all comes together. Again, I'm not finished. I don't know if these are symbolisms or metaphors for things. Again, not knowing which side is real, which reality is real, if they're both real, dreams. But pulling from a lot of things, I don't know. It can be tough to try and emulate a lot of things for nostalgia's sake. I don't know if pulling all of these threads will actually come together. I'm in chapter 7 and I'm waiting for things to be revealed or there to be these revelations of connections. I'm just not seeing it, and I don't want to say it's like Lost, the TV show, where it's like all of these red herrings, but ultimately they don't amount to anything. I wouldn't say it's quite like that, but I'm just feeling like the story is not progressing as much as it should be, or if, what is happening or what ultimately happens winds up being so simple that it didn't need all 10 chapters. I don't know. I don't want to rant too much, but it alludes to a lot, but not really. And then so far, things are not really coming to fruition. So that's sort of my take on the story. All right, let's wrap up the conversation about By Sweet Carole. This is an interesting experience. So from the perspective of just the vibe, really satisfying to play in what seems like a Disney aesthetic in a world, especially with some of the things that happen. It seems like you're playing in an actual Disney world, which is maybe a mashup of multiple different things. Really incredible production value visually, certainly just what you're seeing, the animations, the audio. I think it really nails the aesthetic, and in all honesty, it's probably the most attractive thing to most gamers to this game. I know a lot of people on Reddit are raving about this game. People who like this game really like it. I think it's the vibe that's getting people in the door. On the other side of it, the gameplay, I feel like it's a bit lacking. And maybe a lot of people that are all about the aesthetic are kind of okay with the gameplay. There's a lot of expectations that I had. Maybe that's just on me. But I was definitely looking for more action, things to be faster, maybe like combat or more, melee stuff. There is some stuff, but it's really not that much. It's a standard 2D puzzle adventure game. A lot of back and forth, wandering, exploring, find keys to unlock and get new keys, combine items, things like that. It's pretty standard in that light. And I don't think it in particularly does anything bad in that aspect. Same with the 2D horror. A lot of stealth, hide and seek. It's very much out of Little Nightmares, games like that might give you a little tension. Some cool variation now and then, especially with mini games. Again, reminds me a lot of Space for the Unbound. Like, you are varying some of the things that you're doing when it comes to like things you need to pay attention or, button things that you're doing. If I had to come up with a wish list, obviously I just talked about there being more action. That's not really how they decided with this game. But in the context of how they made this game, I feel like more exploration would have been cool. I mean, I don't know what people are doing to be completionist in this game, but I'm not finding any secrets. There's no collectibles. I would really like something like that to just, give more reason to wander around and go through some of these horror sequences or try to minimize it. Because as of now, like, I'm just kind of running back and forth, and especially if I'm a little confused about a puzzle or I'm a little stuck, I just wind up running back and forth to the rooms I was already in, and maybe there's something I didn't notice, or maybe there's another pathway. But for the most part, it is repetitive. So less repetition in a lot of ways. So environmental animations, can't say it enough. Like every time I hit the switch, I don't need to have the camera pan over and see what it's opening. Like I get it. The horror chase, again, I don't mind it. It does it fine, but it just doesn't evolve as you go through the game. Like you do a major one in chapter 2 or 3 or something like that, and then they're all like that. It just gets a little old. Grabbing the letter. Oh my God. Multiple times throughout this game, she sees a letter that's far away and you try to go over to it and then there's an animation. She goes up to it, her hand's about to touch it, and then it blows away. And then you have to go find it in the next place it blows to. The beginning of the game is like 10 minutes like this. Like the letter gets blown away like 5 times. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I have to see her like chase after a letter one more time, like just grab it. Like I don't know, I don't understand. Just grab the letter. So that's going to be very frustrating for some people. And just the idea of the sandbox back and forth, the unlock sequence. Again, I've played a lot of survival horror games. Like, I don't mind that aspect, but there's got to be some, higher level things, or at least the puzzles. Like, it can't just be like, go to the room that you haven't been to, or, combine these items. Like, there are some later in the game where you have to like mix chemicals and do something. Like, it is cool, but it's just few and far between. I feel like most of the time I'm just wandering, trying not to trigger something to jump out and chase me. In terms of value, $25 for an MSRP, I don't know. I think it's a bit steep. I certainly understand from a production value it seeming justified, but I don't feel like there's enough gameplay depth to really warrant this high price. I paid $17 for it on sale. I don't know. I wasn't too crazy about that as I was getting into the game. I feel like maybe a 15 or even a 20 for an MSRP is fine. I would probably pay $10 on sale for this. I feel like that's a good price. I mean, if it's 25, I'm sure it'll be 50% at some point, so maybe $12 isn't too bad. I feel like it was very ambitious to make this game, and this aesthetic, it definitely is going to pull on nostalgia for people who grew up with these Disney movies, or even, younger kids now who are into Disney and want to look back at like the older aesthetic or visually what it looked like, the haziness. Coming into it, knowing what this visually was like, the production value, it definitely made for a unique experience. So it's not something that I regret playing. Gameplay, it left me a bit wanting. I would say consider all of that I've said, and if it still sounds interesting to you, then I do recommend this game. Alright, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Stay tuned for our next episode to see what new game we found for you.